Good morning, everyone, and welcome to University Unitarian Church in Seattle. It's Sunday, September 26th, 2021, and my name is Jon Luopa. I'm one of the ministers here and happy to greet you this morning here with my colleague, Reverend Beth Chronister, our music team and our tech team, and good to have you all here with us today. And to thank you also for remembering to wear your mask whenever we are in the building, and that we are singing in our hearts and not with our lips. At this point, after the service today, for those who are brand new to the community and wish to learn more about us and Unitarian Universalism, there is an information session downstairs in the Dix room. And the young adult group will meet today at 12:45 in the Servetus room, also downstairs. That's if you're between the ages of 18 and 35, that's for you. Our 8th Principal Process team is having a beloved community art project. You may have noticed it if you came in downstairs on the left there on the tables. As you leave this morning, we invite you to stop and view it and put your words of wisdom on there if you are so moved. And of course, after the service, coffee and conversation both upstairs here on the porch and downstairs in the outside the atrium as you head to the parking lot. We'd like to thank the many folks who've agreed to help us as volunteers on Sunday morning with the coffee team and greeters and ushers and vaccination checkers and all these kinds of things. If this is something you'd like to help us do, maybe once a month or something like that, we encourage you either to stop at the office downstairs this morning to indicate that interest, or through the website UUC Connect. Go to the serving link and indicate your interest. Let us begin the service this morning with our prelude.
I call us to worship this morning with these words. May we be reminded here of our highest aspirations and inspired to bring our gifts of love and service to the altar of humanity, May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and in miracle to the universe, to this community, and to each other. Welcome to University Unitarian Church. Welcome to worship this morning. Would you please rise now in body or in spirit to join in feeling and emanating back our doxology, followed by hymn number 21, For the Beauty of the Earth.
Good morning. My name is Jon Luopa. I'm honored to have been elected recently to serve UUC on the Board of Trustees. I'm taking a minute now to discuss why my wife Deb and I happily donate to support the work of this church. It's hard to single out only a few reasons. We contribute to support the entire community. We support a community of people who derive meaning and support from their covenant groups, who value their conversations in the men's group, who do what they can both locally and nationally to fight climate change, who volunteer to help serve a meal to those in need, thus giving the homeless some dignity for a little while. We love how our religious education programs, or what we now call family ministry, help our children and youth grow. But we also see parents who participate in those same programs growing just as much as the children and youth. It goes without saying that I value the dedicated and hardworking staff who have kept this place running despite all the challenges of launching the new building and of a 19-month pandemic. And of course, I value the many facets of UUC's music program. If I'm honest, I'd probably attend UUC pretty regularly if all it offered was a chance to listen to Dwight play the piano on a Sunday morning. For all these reasons and more, we are grateful and we donate to UUC. Now please join me in saying the words we say each week. This church is a community of ourselves. Its energy and resources are our energy and resources. Its wealth is what we share. When we contribute to the life of this community, we affirm our lives within it.
Would you please join me now in the spirit of prayer and of meditation? Spirit of life, holy interconnected oneness, you in the changing light, in the falling rain, you in the eternal cycles of birthing and dying, being and becoming. In this time of moving from summer to fall, may the parched earth drink deep of the coming rains. May the roots of the forest be nourished by last season's labors. May the salmon swimming upstream in sacred pilgrimage find their ancestral home, awaiting their return. May the vulnerable be sheltered from the coming chill. and may the harvest be made more abundant because it is shared. Spirit of life, God in the autumn leaves, in this liminal space between seasons, as the trees do with such grace, help us to release what no longer serves. As the leaves return to the earth, nourish our gratitude for the ones who went before. As the salmon swim, guide us in the sacred pilgrimage of life abundant, learning to trust that inner call of wisdom. Remind us to enjoy the gifts of the earth and the fruits of labor with both humility and care, receiving so that we may give, and giving so that we may receive. Food for the hungry, shelter for the vulnerable, embrace for the rejected. And let us drink deep of our days as we join in the circle dance of the year, moving in rhythm on this blue-green marble, spinning through space. To these words, I invite you to add the silent prayers and gratitudes and longings of your own hearts. Blessed be, and amen.
Friends, I invite you to stand or remain seated as you wish as we listen to our second hymn, number 6, Just as Long as I Have Breath. Tomorrow is September 27th, and it is the 40th anniversary of my ordination to Unitarian Universalist ministry. Well, thank you. In Worcester, Massachusetts, at the First Unitarian Church. I was 25 years old when I was ordained, but it actually started a lot earlier than that, 10 years earlier than that, when I was 15, when I first heard a call to professional religious life. And over the last 4 decades, I have heard this call a couple of times. It always seems to come at what I call hinge points or turning points along the way of one's development as a person. And I know that you have these hinge points as well. We all do. They begin in adolescence, and then they resurface in young adulthood. If we've started working in a particular way, it comes back to us in mid-career or midlife, sometimes called the midlife crisis. Returns again when we're thinking about stopping doing the kind of work we may have done a long time. We retire. And then it happens also in retirement too, because the reality is, of course, that many of us will retire, and we may be retired longer than we actually worked in any particular profession. And that is something considerable to think about. There are a certain set of questions that come during these turning points. They're usually pretty much the same kinds of questions, like, what is calling my attention now? What should my priorities be in life? Am I fulfilled with who I am, or fulfilled with what I'm doing? Or what must I do to rebalance or realign my life? It seems to have gone off track somewhat. And some of these questions are more pressing at various points over the course of one's life. But it's usually a mix of those kinds of questions. Not long after I arrived here in the summer of 1999, one of our venerable elders at the time approached me in a coffee hour and said to me, "Look, I need your help. I've been retired now just a couple of years. I've had a long and very happy teaching career at the University of Washington in early childhood development. I've written 4 or 5 books. 4 of them are still used as textbooks in graduate school after all these years. I'm not a wealthy person, but I'm comfortable, and I have all my wits about me. What am I going to do with my life? I'm looking ahead and thinking maybe 10 years more of doing something meaningful, purposeful, but I don't know where to start with that." And actually with this person, that period of retirement lasted 30 years. This is an issue which some of us are facing, all of us will face at some point in our lives. And to answer the questions, or to wrestle with the questions, we both need to do an inward look and an outward look. When we look inward, we ask ourselves things like, well, who am I anyway? Not who my parents say I am, or my upbringing, but who am I really? Am I different from that? What are my gifts? Do I have any unique gifts or strengths or interests? And what is it that makes me most happy? I think that's a perplexing question that all of us ask during the course of our working lives. And we know there's trouble ahead if we say to ourselves, there's no more joy in my work. I show up, but there's no more joy. We have to look outside as well, in addition to looking inside. And when we look outside, we have to ask ourselves the question, is there something out there in the larger world, in the community, that is luring me to respond, to get involved with, something that I can uniquely participate in? Of all the things that are happening in the world, Is there anything that might be calling to us deeply? Some of you may remember a famous maxim attributed to Frederick Buechner, the novelist. You will find your vocation, he said, where your greatest joy and the world's greatest need intersect. This is not an original maxim with Buechner. It's actually a very old Quaker saying. And I have struggled with this over the years because there's still enough of an inner Calvinist in me to say the joy thing is a little tough for me to answer. What's my greatest joy? I'm not supposed to have joy, you see. I don't deserve joy and all that kind of craziness. So I've changed it to say, we're your greatest gift as you know it now, and the world's greatest need intersect, because it is your gift that is the point of access to doing something beyond yourself. Well, this sounds pretty grand and incredible and maybe inaccessible to us. There are very few of us who are Greta Thunberg, the youth climate activist who's captured those who are awake, the world's attention. There are very few of us who can be like that. And there are very few of us who are like Nelson Mandela, who after being imprisoned for nearly 30 years because of the color of his skin, can be released and become the president of his country. We cannot aspire to that kind of greatness, so maybe we are off the hook. Not so fast, you see, because I think it is the case for every one of us that we have a deep craving for some kind of orientation or direction in our lives. This can become almost a frantic search for us at different points in our lives. What am I going to do now? How am I going to make it now? What's going to give me the most meaning now? And those questions burn particularly bright at what I call these hinge points. We were all adolescents once. Some of us have adolescent kids at home. We know this is real. Some of you are young adults. We were all young adults at one point. What am I going to do with my life? What kind of work am I going to do? Am I going to find a partner who's going to be supportive of the kind of work I want to do? Big questions, you see. So when you get there to that hinge point, there are a couple of things that come to us uniquely in those times that if we work on, they will bear dividends. Like what? Well, the first one I'd say, is that we are invited to pay attention in a different way than we've ever paid attention before. I think this is why the poetry of Mary Oliver is so attractive to a lot of Unitarian Universalists and other people, because the primary thrust of her message in her poems is learn how to pay attention to the world all around you. Learn how to pay attention to what is happening within you. Doesn't one of her poems end, at the end of my life, I don't want to think that I was merely a spectator of my own life. I want to have been a participant in my own life. And that can only happen if I pay attention. I think this is another reason why Zen Buddhism is so attractive to so many Unitarian Universalists, because it is a disciplined way of learning how to pay attention to what is happening in my life, paying attention to my breath, paying attention to my thoughts, paying attention to such a degree that you can feel the air currents in the room in which you meditate, because your senses are heightened, you see, paying attention. At these critical points, we are invited to pay attention in a new and a deeper way. Another thing that we are asked to do in these critical times is to cultivate humility. This is not a characteristic typical of most Americans. It is not a characteristic typical of just about any of us, because most of us live lives of privilege, some more than others, but privilege insulates us from humility, where we understand our proper and true place in the larger scheme of things, where we come to recognize that we are not the most important thing in the universe, and that there are many other things that are so beautiful and so fleeting and so important, and that we are lucky enough to witness them and experience them. So learning how to pay attention, cultivating humility. A third thing is that we might learn how to see and hear other people, other living things. Most of us are blind to most of what is out there in the world because we've been educated, socialized, indoctrinated by our culture to see only certain things, to hear only certain things that set off triggers and shut us down. We are not able to really see other people and other things. I think one of the reasons why Black Lives Matter movement has been sustained is because for the first time on its largest scale, more people are able to hear the voices of other people and to see their reality. And there is so much more out there. Wendell Berry said that we used to think that what is good for us is good for the earth. But that's completely backwards. It should be what is good for the earth is good for us. And if we lived in that way, we would have to completely readjust the way in which we interact with the world. Learning how to see and hear others who are different than ourselves is very important. And the last one of just a couple of things that I recommend to you is that it often gives us an opportunity for more direct and personal contact with suffering. Something we want to avoid, of course, to protect ourselves. The suffering of other people in the world, the suffering of the world, the suffering of the earth. We feel so incapable of responding to it at its great depths. I remember a woman used to come and see me in a church in Hartford where I served, and she had been a photographer in Cambodia during the Pol Pot massacres there. And she had won many awards for her photographs in Time magazine and in other places. But the experience of being in the killing fields and seeing mounds of skulls and bones and children brutalized had such an effect on her that all she could do every time she came to see me was sit and cry for an hour and a half. She worked with an excellent psychiatrist and was able to heal over time somewhat. But it reminded me of stories I heard in the neighborhood I grew up in when I talked with Holocaust survivors in terms of what had happened to them. And I could not understand how a nation so civilized could create such monstrous horror on other people. We often find our truest vocation when we confront suffering because we are most deeply moved at our core to respond, to find a way to make a difference. It is important for us to allow that suffering or pain to clarify who we really are. Could I do those things to other people? Probably. Horrifying notion. But let me live in such a way that I don't, and I try to make a difference. And this is where I think that our particular and unusual approach to religion may be helpful. For hundreds and hundreds of years, our traditions have taught the development of the human conscience is the paramount duty of a human being. We must deepen our conscience, sensitize our conscience, broaden our conscience so that we can live the life we are intended to live. It is in our consciences that we are profoundly and honestly confronted with the truth calling out to us. And if we are willing to go there and work with that, we will find again both a looking in and a looking out, you see. When you look in, you ask yourself, am I betraying my true self? Am I in love with a false self? God, I remember as a young adult once working with another group of young adults during which I recognized that I was in love with an image of myself as a 22-year-old that had actually died when I was 16. We carry these things. Am I betraying myself? Am I compassionate enough to myself? Am I able to forgive myself for my frailties? Do I love who I am? It is astonishing how much self-hatred there is that we experience. If we look outside, we ask the similar questions. Have I betrayed the world? James Russell Lowell, poet of old, I'm sure unfamiliar to many, has a wonderful line in one of his poems where he said, be careful not to, quote, betray the world with a kiss, close quote. That we can be so disillusioned about ourselves that we're actually hurting the world and not helping it. Am I compassionate enough to those who suffer? Or do I speed up when I pass the corner and there's someone looking for a handout? And can I find a way to love the world despite all its suffering and all its horrors? Can I still love the world? These questions burn most urgently at certain points in our lives. A time when we are asked to listen to the inner and outer voices. What is calling my attention now? What should my priorities be now? Am I fulfilled with what I am and what I'm doing? And what changes do I need to make a difference and a balance reshifting in my life? And then you come to the cliff and you've got to actually do something about it and act and not just hide in question and answer, endless and endless. To act means to be willing to experiment with the truth you have right now. It's not all the truth. It won't be all the truth, but it is a truth. And you act on it now, and you take the risk of trial and error, trying to refine this to see whether it really is a calling. And you might learn in time that it really wasn't a calling, and I was just trying to meet my dead father's expectations of me, or what my class wanted me to do, or my race, or any of these kinds of things. It isn't my true vocation. I learned this by trial and error. And to take the risk of making the best choice you can with the information you have right now. The willingness to follow a calling simply because it is worth the risk. Some of you may remember William Sloane Coffin, who was the chaplain at Yale University during the Vietnam War years, a very inspiring activist for that cause. He said, a career seeks to be successful, but a calling seeks to be valuable. A career is for making money, but a calling is for making a difference. I don't know how many people I've met over 40 years who've said to me, I hate my job. I hate my job, but it pays well, and it allows me to do a lot of things I probably wouldn't be able to do otherwise. But it isn't meaningful, really. But it pays well. But I'm sometimes ashamed of myself when I go to work. Well, after 40 years in a ministry, having served several congregations, I can say to you that the only saving power is love. The love of yourself, which is not an easy thing. Most of us are taught not to love ourselves. Love of self, love of God, love of a source that is greater than yourself, that is abundantly meaningful and loving. Love of other people in all the myriad diversity, and the love of life. The one truly miraculous, wondrous gift each of us has been given beyond our deserving, certainly, or our asking. We were just given it. What are you going to do with it in the time that you have? Viktor Frankl said that the salvation of humanity is through love and in love. May it be so. Amen. Our closing hymn this morning is hymn number 207. Earth was given as a garden. Folks, I just want to take a moment of a personal favor, I guess. I'd call it that. The stole that I'm wearing today was made by my wife for my 25th ordination anniversary in 2006. And it's needlepoint. And on the back of it is the crest. And I have a couple of colleagues in the audience, so I'm going to say of one of the greatest theological schools in the United States, the Harvard Divinity School. But there are others as well, of course. Pride of place, and pride in this place. And I want to thank you for the privilege of having so far served 22 years in this place, this congregation, with a great history. I have a colleague sitting out here who was the first intern in the church in our predecessor's time. Dr. Abel was here nearly 40 years, and it continues today. It is an enormous privilege for a minister, a pastor, to serve in a place like this that is healthy and strong. It helps us to grow. Hopefully we help you to grow a little bit too, but we are full of appreciation for your kindness and for your support. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. If you see God, may God be with you. If you embrace life, may life return your affection. If you seek a way, may a path be found, and the courage and companionship to take it step by step. We are truly blessed. Let us be grateful and to go forth and love and serve. Amen.